All right, welcome back, guys, to our week 9 predictions. Another week in the books, another weird one at that. Uh, so I say we just jump right into it, talking about the Thursday night football game, a game that I think we all expected the Eagles to win, but Houston put up a bit of a fight there. I think it was a factor that the Eagles were on a short week and they had to fly to Houston, so I think that played a big part. But it was a close game through the first half, and the Eagles didn't pull away until the second half. I was getting a little bit, nervous there for a sec. I didn't like the way they played in the first half,
Yeah, it was not a good first half game, but you rallied in the second, ultimately found a way to win.
which is what matters. I think that's definitely a not obviously not a great opponent, but definitely a game that you look back on and say, that was a quality win. When they didn't look like they had it all there, they pulled out the win anyway. Going next to the Colts and the Patriots game, I think the game itself is less of a headline than the fact that after this game they fired Frank Reich and named Jeff
Yeah,
Saturday as their interim head coach.
which is infinitely shocking. I mean, the only coaching experience he has is a
High
high
school.
school team.
And he went
And
3-7.
yeah, I'm really shocked. He's probably a great dude, but yeah, I
I
don't know why
I
they
was
named
listening to something else, and they were talking about how Jeff Saturday and Peyton Manning had that issue on the sideline. Like, you see that clip all over the place, and they're like, "You got to run the ball, you got to run the ball," and they're like, Jeff Saturday is going to be just pounding the rock with the run. Now that he's coach, he's going to be like, "See, Peyton, told you should have ran the ball."
Yeah, I think Peyton ended up fine with for
Yeah,
himself.
he had 2 rings. I think he was good at the end of the day. But yeah, the Patriots take care of the Colts 26-3. I am interested to see what happens with Jeff Saturday, though. I think he's going to be an interesting guy to have at coach. Going to the Green Bay Detroit game, I think that like Green Bay is just falling apart. Like, finally, I get a win here.
Upset, right?
I've been a fan. I've been like a low key fan of Detroit this entire season. I really like their offense. Their defense just hasn't pulled through. Finally, their defense holds enough to, whether it was their defense or the lack of offense from Aaron Rodgers and his receivers, they find a way to come out on top of the Packers, who have owned the Lions for forever.
Yeah, a very. And I know the Packers aren't good this year, but the Lions haven't been that great either. So that was a bit of a shock to me.
Moving on to the Chargers game. This one was another one that was probably closer than it should have been. The Chargers didn't end up winning the game until the final moments, down to the final seconds, with a game-winning field goal. The Falcons held their own against the Chargers. This was one that I thought you would have had right for. This was one that I thought you would have had right picking the Falcons over the Chargers, because the Chargers were
It
kind of
was,
selling.
yeah, it was looking like I was going to be right for most of the game there, but yeah, the Chargers just found a way to win in the second half,
I mean,
closer
Ju-
than it should have been.
and Justin Herbert didn't have a terrible game. He went 30 for 43, 245 yards with a touchdown and an interception. But yeah, I don't know what happened. I was so mad. I was trying to get Josh Palmer, and someone else in my league already picked him up, which was unfortunate because Josh Palmer had 8 for 106. So pretty decent day for. It's because all their receivers are injured. Mike Williams is out. Keenan Allen is. Who knows what's going on with Keenan Allen?
Keenan Allen.
He's played 2 games this entire season. So, yeah, Keenan Allen being Keenan Allen. That was a pretty big surprise game, but I think the biggest surprise game is right here with the Jets and the Bills. I thought for sure the Bills would handle the Jets, despite the Jets looking like a pretty good team this season, but Bills fall to the Jets in a divisional matchup. I think this is a definition of a trap game. The
Much, but he didn't really mess anything up. So I think that's one of the reasons why they win. And yeah, a pretty shocking loss for the Bills, but I think they'll be back.
Yeah, I don't think this is. I always say that divisional matchups are like the toughest in all of football, and I mean any sport really, because you see them so much. And I mean, two times, can't really say that's a ton, but when you're talking only 17 games, two times is a big point in the season. So I think the Bills will bounce back off of this. It's a divisional game. The Jets are a decent team this season, but yeah, that was a shocking game for me to see. And
Yeah.
it was
Very
2017, so it was a close game, but overall shocking. Minnesota, Washington, one of our featured games that we will talk about on the podcast. But Minnesota comes out on top in Kirk Cousins' return to Washington in 5 years. It's been a
yeah.
while.
And it's ultimately a game I think we lost more than the Vikings won. We definitely could have won it. That Benjamin St. Juste pick six easily could have been like not called pass interference because both players were kind of like tearing and ripping at each other. So I think that's a bit of a throw up play. But other than that, I think the coaching it did not do great this game. I think the offense, it just doesn't seem to have a real flow to it. Scott Turner, I really questioned some of his play calls. He called a QB run on 3rd and 9 and then called a pass on 3rd and 1. And both of those obviously weren't converted. So there's some real shocking play calls by it. No like progression in the offense. It just seems to be very sporadic. Like one drive will barely be able to get anything done. You have a very questionable play call, and then another drive it seems like they're able to get big plays, but it really doesn't flow. Another thing was time management by Rivera. He could have made some better coaching calls, but what really killed us was the Heineke interception in the fourth quarter, just a really bad throw, and I think we kind of saw why Heineke is ultimately a backup, but yeah, it's a game we probably should have won, but we didn't.
And I mean, you guys put up a good fight for only lost by 3 to a team who's 7-1. And I mean,
Yeah.
the Vikings have had their ups and their downs this season, but ultimately they do look like a decent team. They're going to be a playoff team, probably going to win the NFC North with the way that it's looking. The NFC North probably one of the worst divisions in football. So, I mean, the Vikings are definitely a decent team, and I think you guys ultimately put up a good fight for it.
Yeah.
Going to the Carolina Cincinnati game. I thought this game was going to be a lot closer. This is where these games, mess me up because Cincinnati has been on and off all season. Carolina was terrible until Baker got hurt, and now they look like they have a little bit of life to them. But they just get smoked in this game. Just absolutely rocked by the Bengals.
No, correction. They got rocked by Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was just about to say Joe Mixon for the most part, actually, because Joe Mixon scores 5 total touchdowns on him, 4 rushing and 1 receiving. Only 153 yards rushing though, and I mean, you say only 153 very lightly because 153 rushing is still impressive, but yeah, that's definitely a huge win. I was not expecting that.
It's not what you expect from a 4-touchdown game to only have 153 yards.
And Joe Burrow in a 42-21 win, only 206 yards and a touchdown. They were just feeding Joe Mixon the entire day.
Yeah, they didn't really have to pass a lot, and sometimes it's good.
Yeah. Then you go to the Raiders-Jacksonville game. Now, just for some clarification, we both picked Jacksonville on this because obviously when you make the Raiders logo black and white, there's really no change in it because it's already black and white. So, but we both picked the Jaguars in this game, and the Jaguars come out on top. They beat Vegas. Vegas looks kind of like they're falling apart. I don't think Vegas...
And they just fired their head coach, Josh McDaniel.
Which is, I mean, dude, Vegas has now given up, I want to say 3 huge leads. They were up 17-0 and lose. They were up, I want to say 23-7 against the Cardinals in the fourth quarter. They lose that game. They're starting to look like the Super Bowl Falcons. But, I mean, Vegas just, I'm so confused with the way Vegas is playing. They look like a decent team on paper, and they have like some pieces that should be working, but they're 2-6 and just ultimately not finishing.
They have Josh Adams and Devontae Adams, Derek Carr,
Josh
who's
Jacobs.
yeah,
You
what
you
I say?
mix Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. You said Josh Adams.
Oh yeah, yeah. Josh Jacobs and Derek Carr. It's supposed to be a uh, decent quarterback, and I didn't think their defense was terrible. They have some nice rushers, but yeah, this is it. Just doesn't feel like a 2-6 team ultimately, but
You know what I'm gonna call it?
finishing games is important.
I'm calling it the curse of the AFC West. I mean,
Yeah,
no team except for the Chiefs, no team from the AFC West has really looked right. The Chargers, they're yes, the Chargers are 5-3, but the games they're winning are very close, and they're losing games they shouldn't be losing. Justin Herbert, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's still having a decent season, but he doesn't look the best he has ever looked. The
people were thinking
Broncos,
he was going to be an MVP
yeah,
candidate, and he's not really close.
the Broncos, obviously, we all know what has happened to the Broncos. They have just totally fallen apart. Hopefully, after this week, they can bounce back now that they've had their bye and try to get their stuff together. And then the Raiders, like I said, they look like a decent team and just can't hold a lead for longer than 5 minutes. I mean, it's rough. It's tough sledding in the AFC West, and I mean, if they were to get it together, that should be the best division in football by far.
Yeah, but who would have thought the NFC East is the best division in football, which is
I
just
mean,
strange. I would have thought it'd be the AFC West, but
if you look at it by schedule, it's very helpful because all four teams in the NFC East have by last year's win percentage have the easiest schedules. But I mean, still, like,
they
yeah, it
still
is very
they
shocking.
have three teams in the playoffs, and Washington is very close to that other
Washington
wild
could
card
somehow
spot.
pull in.
Yeah,
Yes.
at one point, like we were tied with the Falcons, but they would get the tiebreaker, so it's very close. And with the whole Dan Snyder stuff, and it seems like players are starting to stand up against that. There's a different feel in the team right now, so they could make a playoff run.
Moving on from that, going to the Dolphins at the Bears. I think the biggest headline here is Justin Fields. I mean, what a
Yeah,
breakout season or breakout game for him. Excuse me. I mean, really, it is his breakout season. He didn't do anything great, but yeah, Justin Fields comes out. He puts up 173 rushing yards and a touchdown, and then along with that, another three passing touchdowns. So
yeah. Ever since that Washington game, they've looked very good offensively, which is quite strange.
I'm gonna yeah, he had 123 yards passing with three touchdowns, and then, oh, excuse me, 178 yards rushing and a touchdown, which I believe broke the record for a single game of rushing by a quarterback. Broke Mike Vick's record. Uh,
Well,
if not, then it was very close. But Justin Fields with a big running game and only lose to the Dolphins by three. So yeah, the Bears are starting to get their offense rolling now that uh,
which is
they had the
surprising because they don't really have the greatest
yeah
unit. Like their
they don't
offensive
have
line
great
is
weapons.
no, they don't really have a number one wide receiver you can point to and say, okay, he's the number one guy. I guess Daryl Mooney, but
Darnell Mooney is the number one, but he's not the number one.
he's had some real questions in his young career so far. But yeah, very surprising. But it just seems that the Dolphins' offense was just a little bit more.
Yeah. Did you see? So obviously the election was recently, and did you see on the Florida ballots there was like 17,000 people
Yeah,
that
for
voted for
Tua.
Tua
Yeah,
for
I thought
Congress?
that was a little strange. It reminds me of a few years ago when I think D's Nuts was on a few ballots.
Gotta love America. Gotta love Florida. And what the other funny thing about that was they had Tua on the ballot and it was just straight Tua. There was no last
Yeah, it
name because
wasn't
no
Tua
one
Tagovailoa. It's just Tua.
yeah no one wanted to try to spell that last name. Uh, NFC West matchup. This is surprising just by the team in my opinion, but the Seahawks beat the Cardinals and the Seahawks look legit. I don't think anyone expected this, and they are
Yeah,
putting
they look
together
like
the best team that they can with what they have, and they're doing a great job.
they legit look like they could possibly come out of the NFC. It's a
They
legitimate
could win the
thing.
NFC West, yeah.
they will win the NFC West, and they could possibly win the entire NFC because they have the
All right,
coaching
let's
experience.
slow down there, buddy. The
Okay,
Eagles still undefeated.
yeah, they're still undefeated, but that doesn't mean anything. Remember when the Steelers were 11-0?
I do. The Eagles are not that Steelers team, but uh,
But it's you have to admit it's quite
I,
similar. They both had questions about their record. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. A lot of teams have gotten off to great starts and ultimately failed, but the Seahawks team I think is very good. Geno Smith is actually like
yeah,
a like top 5 MVP contender the way he's played. They have a very good run game in Kenneth Walker, and considering what the defense has, I think they've played better than what they look on paper.
I'm gonna. I'll talk about it more when we get to our actual podcast about the Eagles' record and their undefeated streak going so far, because I do think, yes, obviously they haven't had the strongest schedule, but there are
But they
bits in
still won.
there are stuff that I personally think change the way that I see their undefeated record. Because yes, you look at their competition, they haven't had the greatest competition, but just to close it off there, you can only play who's on your schedule. That's
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what it comes down to, and it's the fact that they're taking advantage of it. But I do want to mention that when we talk about when we go on our actual podcast. So if you guys want to check that out, Brotherly Love in the District, Apple, Spotify, wherever you guys find your podcast. But going back to the Seahawks, yeah, Geno Smith playing out of his mind right now. They're 6-3, 2 games ahead of anyone else in that division, and that would be the 49ers, who are 4-4. But yeah, that division is just falling apart. It doesn't look right. I think it's totally flipped upside down. I think at the beginning of the season I was thinking LA, San Fran, Arizona, Seattle, and it's Seattle, San
Yeah.
Fran, LA, Arizona right now.
It's
So
completely flipped, and I've said this before, but I think this is honestly one of Pete Carroll's best coaching performances, and that's a lot to say considering the he won a Super Bowl, he went to another one, and the amount of good teams the Seahawks have had over the years. I think this is it's very impressive. I know I had questions about him last season, but I think like it seems like getting rid of Russell Wilson was a very good move, and next season, if they're able to continue this form and add to the defense, I think this could be a scary team.
I think theoretically, I okay. So right now, I would say the Eagles, or at the beginning of the season, like say 5 games in, before the Seahawks really started coming on, I thought the Eagles would just walk to the Super Bowl with no competition, because Green Bay looks terrible. Like the teams who
Yeah.
you thought would give them a fight, Green Bay,
The Rams,
San Fran, and the Rams, are 3-6, 4-4, and 3-5 respectively. They are all terrible. Then Minnesota, I thought would have a decent chance, but you saw earlier in the season. Now things changed throughout the season, but you saw earlier in the season the Eagles just absolutely dominate the Vikings. So I think they could still put up a fight, but ultimately I think and Tampa Bay I also thought would be one of
yeah,
those teams who could take them down, but they're 4-5. But right now, looking at the NFC, aside from divisional opponents, I'm going to take them out of it because that's a whole different story. Aside from divisional opponents, I think the only two potential teams that could take them out would be the Vikings and the Seahawks. And I
yeah,
think the Eagles have a very good track record and a very good history against the Vikings. So ultimately, I think really the only team who could take them out right now would be the Seahawks.
yeah. And if we look at the past, the Texans had a lot of success with the run game, and
Yeah,
so
Kenneth
does
Walker
the
is
Seahawks.
having a rookie of the year season right now.
And Geno Smith has limited turnovers, and I think that's if you want to beat the Eagles, I think that's something you need to do. You can't
Protect
really
the
give
ball.
it, yeah, protect the ball, and they obviously they I think they have more playoff experience, oh, like than the Eagles. I know the Eagles have their defensive line, but outside of that, it's a very different team from your Super Bowl team. So I think that's probably going to be the NFC Championship, and I think that's going to be a
That'd be a
very
good
close
one. Yeah, that would be a very good one. Moving on to the Rams against the Buccaneers NFC Championship rematch. And
game.
I mean, it didn't look great. Tampa Bay had to come back, crawl back, and they ended up getting a pass interference call in the end zone to give them a shot to win that game. And because they had turned the ball over with 2 minutes left, and the Rams just couldn't capitalize. I want to say, did Matthew Stafford fumble or did he throw a pick? 'Cause
He fumbled.
and Tampa recovers, and they end up driving down the field, and they get a pass interference flag in the end zone, which automatically puts them on the 1 yard line, and obviously Tom Brady on the 1 yard line, money every time. So Tampa Bay ends up coming back and winning a close game, 16-13.
But this is just an ugly game. Something's wrong with Matthew Stafford, and I just don't think Tom Brady has it.
He's now in concussion protocol.
Yeah, and he threw the ball almost 60 times and had less than 300 yards. So I think something's wrong there. Both of the offense struggled, and again, the Bucks could not get the run game going, which it looked like that was going to be the catalyst of their offense in Week 1 when they ran all over the Cowboys, but that's just not it. So yeah, a very disappointing game, and something's wrong with these teams.
It's not even like Tampa Bay doesn't have a strength in running. Like Leonard Fournette has revived his career in Tampa, and then also they have Rashad White behind him. So I mean, it's not like they have a lack of running depth. It's just they haven't been using them.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting to see what's going on there. I mean, the fact that the Falcons lead that division right now is kind of crazy. Actually, they're tied, and since Tampa has a better divisional record, Tampa technically leads. But it is a very close division down there. Again, another really bad division. And then going from a disappointing game to a very close and exciting game, Tennessee at Kansas City.
And it's a game the Titans probably should have won because that pass interference call that was called in the red zone, that was a pass interference call. Like, Travis Kelce was the one doing the pass interference, but they called it against the defensive guy. But this is a crazy game. The Chiefs almost threw the ball 70 times, which is just utterly ridiculous. But I think the Titans possibly showed a track record as to how to beat the Chiefs. Good red zone defense and basically like running the ball like down their throat, like old style football. Pretty much, you try and control the ball as much as you can and try and like keep the ball out of their offense's hands.
I mean, the big key to beating the Titans right now is, and I mean, Kansas City didn't do it. Kansas City did it by luck, in my opinion. I think Patrick Mahomes owned Tennessee's defense on that last drive. He ran for half of the yardage that they had to get downfield to tie the game. He also scored the final 2-point conversion to tie the game up. Patrick Mahomes was owning the Tennessee defense on the back half of that drive. But Tennessee, really, I think the biggest key to beating them, not doing it Kansas City's way, is being able to get out to a big lead early and shutting down Derrick Henry. Like, if you make Tennessee one-dimensional, you're going to win the game. I mean, here, listen to their receivers. Tell me how many of these names you know. I don't even know this guy's first name. Chigoziem Okonkwo. He was their,
no clue who that is.
He was their leading receiver with 48 yards. Austin Hooper, 2 for 34.
He used to play for the Browns.
I know Austin Hooper. Hassan Haskins, 1 for 2. And then after that, Robert Woods, I believe this is Chris Conley. Yeah, Chris Conley.
Nick Westbrook.
Cody
Hilliard.
Hollister, and then Dontrell Hilliard.
Not a good.
Who? I think that's the only thing you can say is who. They have no one. I mean, Robert Woods is probably on the back end of his career. I recognize Chris Conley, but he's an older guy. They just have no receivers. So if you can shut them down, make them one-dimensional, and make Malik Willis have to throw the ball, you have a way better chance of winning than just having Derrick Henry run you down.
Yeah, but they still almost beat the Chiefs playing like that, and I think that's kind of the track record to beat the Chiefs. Just look at that game, and they easily could have won and probably should have if we're looking at it objectively.
Closing out the week, we have Baltimore at the Saints, a game that I thought was going to be closer. I didn't realize Baltimore was 6-3. They're having a better season than I thought they were, but Baltimore pulls it out on top over the Saints and get a Monday night win to move to 6-3.
Yeah, and I think I've always liked the Ravens this season, and I think once they get a wide receiver or two and offensive weapons, maybe one more defensive weapons, I think they could be back to being Super Bowl contenders. I don't think they will this year because I just don't think they have it overall. There's still some holes, but I think this could possibly be a very good team in the future.
He's kind of breaking out with the loss of all the other running backs. Kenyon
Kenyon
Drake.
Drake.
Yeah, he's playing big, and so is Isaiah Likely, who's playing for Mark Andrews while he's injured right now. So they're
Very
definitely
unlikely.
yeah, unlikely heroes for the Ravens. That is for sure. But to close out the week, I'll pull up. We have come a lot closer in games because there was a lot of changes in games in this week. You are on the season 53-36, and I climbed up to 51-38 this season. So
Very close.
I'm only 2 games behind. For this week, I went 10-3. You went 7-6. The ones. Do you want to know the ones that you went out on, or do you know them?
Um, it was the Rams Bucks.
Yes.
It was the Bills Jets.
Bills Jets.
Packers,
Yep.
Lions,
Those are the only two that we had the same where we both lost.
Falcons Lions.
Falcons. Oh yeah, Falcons game and the
Falcons
Lions
Cards,
game.
not Falcons
No, yeah,
Lions.
but you were right. Both of them were losses, and then the only other one. There were two more.
Raiders Jags.
No, you picked Jacksonville.
Um,
You picked Carolina to beat Cincy,
yeah, it did, didn't I?
and you picked Arizona to beat Seattle. Which that's not as bad as a pick. I don't. I respect
No.
that. I respect that pick. Arizona is a decent team, especially with D Hop. So going from week 9 and going over to week 10. Give me 1 second. I will pull up. Going over to week 10, we start out tonight, Thursday Night Football, with the Falcons and Carolina. They just played 2 weeks ago. They really made the scheduling weird this season with some of their scheduling. I mean, I know Washington plays the Giants like twice in 3 weeks. I want to say the Eagles do the same.
And like either 1 or 2 years ago, we actually played them twice in a row at the end of the season, so that was weird scheduling.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
they've had some weird scheduling in my opinion, but Atlanta at Carolina. Last time they played, this was an absolute thriller.
Yeah, it was the last second catch for a touchdown, but he took his helmet off,
so they missed the extra point, and then
yeah, I mean, I still think it'll be a good game, but I don't think it'll be as good of a game as that one was. That one was just that's going to be hard to match.
Yeah.
But I have the Falcons winning because they just took the Chargers to a very close game, and I think they're actually a decent team this year, which I did not think I would. I thought they were going to be like a bottom 5 team in the league.
So initially, I was going to go with Carolina, but they have Baker Mayfield back, and Baker Mayfield's not a good quarterback this season. I mean, not that he's ever really been a good quarterback, but he's terrible. So since Baker Mayfield's back, I'm taking Atlanta. If PJ Walker was playing, which is such a weird thing to say in my head, if PJ Walker was playing, I'd be picking Carolina right now.
No one's ever said that sentence.
Exactly. But going to Seattle at Tampa, this is a weird game. I mean, this is one that normally you'd pick Tampa on. Since Tampa's just been so, not playing. I mean, they're playing terrible. Yeah, underwhelming. Thank you. I'm picking Seattle in this game.
I am too, and this is a game that's going to be in Germany, so it's early. But yeah, I just don't really see what the Bucks will be able to do. I mean, you know what they're going to do. They're going to throw the ball almost 60 times a game, but they struggle to score points.
This is a game where I think the Seahawks kind of have an advantage since they're both flying to Germany. Obviously, that's going to play a role, but being in Seattle, you fly a lot. I mean, you're up in the northwest corner of the U.S. You really have no one near you, so they fly a lot. So I think Seattle kind of has a bit of an advantage here because they're used to the jet lag and flying all over the place. So that's a big reason I'm picking Seattle in this one.
And we don't know about Tom Brady with the concussion protocol, so that is too much of a question to be able to put faith in the Bucks.
Also, I hate the early games because I'm not up early enough to fix my lineups. So, I wake up and if someone is a last minute not playing,
Oh, question, but
yeah,
yeah, that
I'm
that sucks.
I'm screwed over. It kind of sucks. But moving to Minnesota at Buffalo, this is another interesting game. I think Buffalo though overall has a better team. I think Minnesota has been a team that kind of benefits from a weaker schedule, and I also a weak division. That division is terrible right now. I don't know how many division games they've played, but they have a terrible division, so I think they're getting a lot of wins from that, so I'm picking Buffalo in this.
I am too, and I think they're going to want to have a bounce back week.
Detroit at Chicago.
This is a
Earlier in the season, I would pick Detroit in this, but since that Thursday night game, like you said, Chicago's offense has been balling,
yeah, it's
and
been weirdly good.
Detroit's defense just hasn't been great. Justin Fields looks like he's starting to come on. Maybe the first Ohio State quarterback to actually do something in forever. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick Chicago in this one, especially in Chicago in the Windy City. Not that the cold would really affect Detroit, but
no, I am too. I'm going to pick Chicago. They've been able to score like upwards of 30 points multiple times since the Washington game, so I have to put faith in them.
uh, Denver at Tennessee. I think this is an easy one to pick. I mean Denver does have a really good defense, but Derrick Henry is just a on the football field a god amongst men. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. I got to go with Derrick Henry in Tennessee here. They're playing really well, and Jeffrey Simmons in the middle, he's playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, I know the Broncos, they had a decent last game. I know that they've come off a bye, so maybe that's going to be beneficial, but after seeing like how close the Titans were to beating the Chiefs, I think they'll be able to handle the Broncos.
Had me going there for a sec. I thought you were gonna pick Denver.
I considered it.
All right, Jacksonville at Kansas City. I think this is an easy one for both of us. I'm picking Kansas City. I mean,
I'm picking Jackson. No, I'm picking the Chiefs.
I was thought you were being legit for a sec. This is gonna be a fun game to watch though. It's a Dougie Fresh against Andy Reid. So that they obviously have a lot in common, and Dougie Fresh coming from the Andy Reid tree. So it is gonna be interesting to watch that game. But ultimately, Patrick Mahomes is a magician, and Jacksonville doesn't really stand a chance.
Yeah, I think Travis Etienne will have another huge game, which is good for
Yeah,
me for
he is
fantasy.
popping off this season.
Yeah, and if Brees Hall hadn't gotten hurt, I would have looked like a genius because I drafted both of them, but it's not to be.
But you don't. Uh, Cleveland at Miami. Uh, it's week 10.
Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to pick Miami. I was just trying to do the math in my head on when Deshaun Watson comes back,
Few
which
more
is,
weeks.
like 2 more weeks. So,
Yeah.
because I believe they play this week, and then, actually, no, I think it's week 13. I think they play this week, and then he has either they play next week and they have a bye, or they have a bye next week, and then he still has to, because it's 11 games, not 11 weeks. So, he still has a little bit, but both picking Miami there.
The Browns don't have a bye. The Browns don't have a bye until like week 16 or
Oh,
17.
I guess I did the math wrong. Uh,
Nope, they've already had their bye.
that's what it was. Okay, so I knew that they had a little bit. I knew that Deshaun Watson wasn't going to be back in week 12. Uh,
Yeah.
so Texans at the Giants. I think this is an easy game for the Giants. Their defense is
Yeah.
really good. It's going to be interesting to see their run defense against Damian Pierce. Damian Pierce is a monster, but I'm picking the Giants here.
I am too.
New Orleans at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has changed their philosophies a little bit since playing the Eagles, but I think New Orleans, some just like occasionally they have sneaky good games. Andy Dalton has been playing decently in the backup position. He's keeping them in games. I'm picking New Orleans in this game. I really don't like the way Pittsburgh has been playing this season.
Yeah, I am too. I just don't think the Pittsburgh offense is good with Kenny Pickett.
I would agree there. We still have yet to pick a different game. Indianapolis at Las Vegas. Maybe this is the first one because I'm picking Las Vegas here. Oh wow! I mean, this is.
Why
I don't
would I
think Jeff.
choose the
I don't
place
think
that-
Jeff Saturday is going to win his first game as a
No,
head
they
coach.
still have Sam Ellinger.
Yeah, Ellinger at back, which maybe Matt Ryan gets the starting job back with uh, with Jeff Saturday coming, but as of right now,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a new coach. I mean, it's probably the
there's going to be
coordinator
a
is probably
adjustment
going to
period.
be. I think the coordinators are probably going to be calling the game a lot more than Saturday is. But there's no way the Colts pulled this out.
Dallas at Green Bay. You know how lovely it would be for Green Bay to, finally get together and beat Dallas, but they just lost their top receiver in Romeo Dobbs. I gotta pick
Yeah,
Dallas here,
it ain't
unfortunately.
happening. The Cowboys are going to whoop the Packers.
Uh, Arizona at LA. This is one where I like. LA should win this, but I'm gonna
But they're
pick.
not going to.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Arizona in this one in this matchup.
Yeah,
I
and
just don't like.
I think this year it's really hurt Matt Stafford because if this continues, he's not getting into the Hall, and I think if he were to able to have a few more good years, I think he'd have a better
Resume.
chance. But yeah, if this continues, he's not getting anywhere close to it. The Rams team is. I don't know what's wrong with them. I
Yeah.
really don't.
Now, a Sunday night game, the Chargers at San Fran. I think this will be a pretty good game. I mean, not for the right reasons. I think these are two teams who should be playing well and are underperforming a little bit, but I think it's going to be a good game ultimately. And
Yeah.
I'm going to pick the Chargers.
I'm going to pick the 49ers. I just think Christian McCaffrey so far has really complemented the Shanahan offense. And so I think they'll be able to pull out the win.
And to end it off on Monday Night Football, our game, Washington at Philadelphia. This was supposed to be the game Wentz returns to Philly, but obviously that's not going to happen with his injury. I don't think Washington can pull off the upset and, end the Eagles' undefeated streak, and I'm picking Philly in this one.
I am too. I think we could make it close, but after seeing last week and how bad the play calling was in general and how bad I think the coaching was and time management, I just don't think it's going to happen. And Heineke last week, he showed some greatness, but that pick he threw was bad. That's why he's ultimately going to be a career backup quarterback, and that's why he's not the future.
It's going to be fun to watch the Eagles defense feast on Taylor Heineke.
I mean, maybe not feast. Well,
yeah, come on, yeah.
He'll throw a pick. He's obviously going to throw a pick because that's what he does. But
Eagles will shut down the run, make Taylor Heineke throw the ball. It's not going to work out well for Washington.
I can't see us doing that well.
And just to close it out here for this week, go ahead, listen to our podcast, Brotherly Love in the District, on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you guys get your podcasts. You guys can get our stuff right here. Oh, this side. Actually, my first wrong. I think that's one of my first wrongdoings. But yeah, Instagram, TikTok at BL in the DC if you guys want to go check those out. If you guys want to email us questions or comments to put in the show, at blinthedc@gmail.com. Also right there in the middle of the screen. We do our weekly predictions on YouTube and come out with weekly podcasts on Spotify and Apple. So if you guys want to check that stuff out, go ahead and subscribe to all that stuff on YouTube and Spotify and Apple. And with that, we're going to close it off there, and we will see you guys next week.
See you later.